Hey everybody, this is Mr. Rompin again coming at you with another APUSH video. We're continuing our look at topic 8.12, focusing in on youth culture of the 1960s. Now, previously we've talked a lot about the political aspects of the emerging culture amongst young people in the 1960s. That is going to be questioning, what government is supposed to be, the function of the military, trying to find, a sense of, coming to grips with, a sense of a tradition of racism and sexism and consumerism and all that kind of stuff. Now today some of that's going to be part of what we're taking a look at today. But when we take a look at the counterculture, also known as the hippies, it's really about a lifestyle and some of these, for the most part, non-political aspects of American life and values of American society. So it's not going to be so heavy on the politics today, but it is going to be a reaction to that 1950s consumerist, conformist, kind of a life that these young people were raised with. And remember, we talked about the impact of the beatniks, which in the late 50s there is a sense of already kind of poking holes in the common understanding of how people should look and how people should live their lives and what they should be aspiring to and all that kind of stuff. Of course, there's the impact of rock and roll in terms of once again questioning the norms, challenging, kind of rattling the cage a little bit with what's going on. And note, those are going to be significant foundational components to what will be the counterculture. I tend to believe that if you didn't have rock and roll and you didn't have the beatniks, you're probably not going to have the counterculture as we understand it to be. And so when we talk about the counterculture, part of it is this sense of being an individual, being yourself, rejection of conformity. And when it comes to clothes that you might wear or how you might present yourself, it's going to create a very wildly different sense of how one expresses themselves through their clothes. And the idea being is do what's comfortable. Wear what you want to wear, not what society says you have to wear, but what you want to wear, to be comfortable, to express who you are individually, to express how you are in a creative way. And so this is really going to shake up how men and women are going to be looking. You've got, men that are going to be growing their hair long. You're going to see more pronounced facial hair, especially sideburns. You're going to be, seeing, guys wearing, flashier clothes. As you can see, these guys are definitely wearing some flashy, colorful clothes. For women, the idea of, rejecting the traditional kind of long dress and things like that. People wearing tie-dyed clothes and, just a general sense of being individualistic, not afraid to be creative, and really just kind of blowing the top off of this idea of how somebody is supposed to look, from wearing sandals instead of dress shoes, to wearing, peace medallions, all of that is going to be part of what these folks in the counterculture are going to be. Now, that being said, if the counterculture was simply a fashion trend, we wouldn't be talking about that right now. It's going to be much larger than that. And as we're kind of, rejecting conformity in terms of how we dress and present ourselves, we're going to be rejecting just these old assumptions that the older generations had been providing. And part of that included experimentation with drugs. The idea being is that the older generation said, no, drugs are bad. They'll destroy your life. You don't want to be a part of that. However, this young generation is going to be saying, well, why is that the case? Why are you saying it's bad? They see parents that, drink martinis at lunch sometimes, and feel like, well, you are using a different type of drug. Why is this any different? And so it's rejecting the sense of avoiding something simply because authority had told you to avoid something. that, in other words, they're going to learn their own lessons with what they want and don't want to do. And drugs will certainly fit into that category. Marijuana, which had been mostly, found in, the beatnik community and in certain parts of inner cities, is now going to become widespread across America. And, for many, in the counterculture, they will find that marijuana is no more harmful, no more addictive than alcohol, and it allows folks to be able to have, a little bit, less anxiety and a little bit more ease in who they are. And as marijuana really becomes popular amongst young people, we also see the expansion of LSD. Now, LSD is a powerful hallucinogen, and adherents to the really, really powerful values of the counterculture are going to swear by LSD as a way to engage in real connection with the universe. Folks that support LSD usage would argue that taking that trip, by taking that hit of acid, and note, when you take that hit of acid, you're talking about 8 to 12 hour drug experience where you are experiencing hallucinations, and in many cases powerful hallucinations. There's a sense that you get this connectivity with all of humanity and with the universe and with God and spirituality. There's this great connectivity that you feel that you are a part of. Now, that being said, every drug comes with side effects, and especially LSD. For some, LSD they will claim this the greatest spiritual experience of their life, but for others it will be an absolute nightmare in terms of the pretty horrific visions and hallucinations that they will be employing. So understand that the idea of making drugs a little bit more mainstream is going to be something that's going to be a part of the counterculture, and a willingness to use drugs not just to get intoxicated. And I think that's a big point here, is that it's not just to get intoxicated, like many would say that was the purpose of alcohol, is to get intoxicated, but to really find a spiritual connection, that to have this inner understanding that you would not get with, alcohol, for example. Now, something else that is going to be another component of this counterculture experience will be a significant change in values regarding sex. A real sexual revolution will be sweeping across America in the 1960s, especially amongst young people. And some of this is going to be driven by just general questioning of values, but there's also going to be a technological component to it. In 1962, the birth control pill is going to be now out on the marketplace, and for millions of young women, the fear of becoming pregnant through sexual activity is now going to be taken away. And so this will, make it easier, seemingly, for young people to engage in sexual activity with seemingly less consequences. And so when you throw that, technological change in with these overall changes of redefining what is right, what is wrong, this is going to explain that, we're going to see young people engaging in attitudes of rejecting sex as being something that is only for procreation and should only be done within the confines of a marriage, to the idea of having sexual relations with people that you like and may not have known for a very long time, and with far less likelihood of commitment and things like that. There's just this sense of freedom in terms of sexual activity, and the idea being is that that sex shouldn't be shamed, that sex should not be something that is regulated, and that should be embraced as just part of life. So you see that changing for sure, and with that sexual revolution will come a much larger increase in the divorce rate. We will see divorce rates skyrocket in the 1960s and 70s to about 50%, which is close to what it is today. So you're seeing a dramatic number of divorces taking place in American history as part of these changing values. Now, kind of overlapping to some degree this idea of a sexual revolution and kind of overlapping with some of the radical politics of the last video, is the idea of trying to create a real community amongst people. For some in the counterculture movement is the idea of, okay, let's really try to make what we believe to be our philosophy a reality. The idea of, okay, let's reject consumerism, let's reject a fixation on acquiring wealth and possessions, and let's, for example, move out to the country, and we'll move out there with other like-minded people and buy a piece of property to grow crops and to build a shelter, and the idea of sharing responsibilities and sharing the fruits of their labor, sharing possessions, and this idea of almost like a village-like lifestyle that certainly was a clash with the suburban, private ownership notion of what American life is all about. The counterculture is about we versus the traditional attitude of me. And, this is going to, be a different way of trying to define, the way one lives. And it also, connects with other things like questioning spirituality and religion. You saw a rejection for many in the counterculture of, mainstream Christianity and Judaism, and embracing Eastern philosophy and Eastern religions, and a sense of being spiritual without being religious per se, and you're questioning all of these kinds of things. But it also includes how we view music. Rock music does not go away from the 1950s, but it will certainly evolve from "She Loves Me, Yeah, Yeah, Yeah" to now, a sense of psychedelia. And you are seeing, acid-driven music. You are seeing, a sense of these questioning of values spiritually, sexually, in terms of experimenting with drugs and, questioning things from the war, changing how the music sounds. And you start to see, very popular groups like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and the Who and others change their music to reflect these more psychedelic values and countercultural values. And this, evolution of what rock music is going to connect with the overall ideals of communal living and spiritual connectedness and a liberal, attitude on drugs, and it will come together with the Woodstock Concert, which will take place in the Catskills outside of New York City. We will see upwards of 400,000 people showing up at this concert, a free concert with some of the most popular musical acts of the time. As you see here pictured, Jefferson Airplane. So, the idea of, can we create for a few days a real massive community of where music and art and, oneness, bringing humanity together? Can this work? The older generation was scared to death. 400,000 people, with limited, infrastructure. A big, massive rainstorm came in. Mud was everywhere. Drugs were everywhere. Free love was all over the place. And so there was a sense of, oh my gosh, this will turn out to be an absolute nightmarish debacle. Many, many people are going to get killed and hurt and whatnot. But in reality, this is going to prove to some degree the ideals of the counterculture. That you could get 400,000 people in the same place at the same time, despite the weather and limited resources, still enjoy peace and love. Nobody gets killed. There are very few accounts of criminal activity, besides drug usage. And the legend goes, I don't know how true it is, that even a baby supposedly was born at Woodstock. I don't know about that. But there's a sense there, at least for a moment, that maybe these values of the counterculture could last forever. Now, they don't, but that's not to say that the hippies don't have a cultural effect. When we look at people dressing, in an individual way, be it through hair dye, or the idea that the average American, has sex for the first time 10 years before they get married. The idea of, fewer people attending, traditional church like they used to. The fact that, marijuana has become mainstream. Those are all effects, some of the effects of the hippies. All right, we'll see you next time.